It was one of those quiet fall evenings in our suburban Ohio home, the kind where the air smells like crisp leaves and the world feels soft and still. The kids were long gone, Jake at college, Sarah married and living across state lines. Just me and David now, rattling around in a house that felt too big for two. I was in the mudroom, sorting through the mess of coats and boots, looking for his car keys. He'd been distracted lately, always misplacing things, and I was used to picking up the slack. My hand slipped into the pocket of his old navy peacoat, the one he wore to the office every day. My fingers brushed against something unexpected, a folded piece of paper, crinkled but deliberate, like it was meant to be there. I pulled it out, and a faint, floral scent hit me. Not my lavender body wash or the citrusy perfume I'd worn since our honeymoon. This was something richer, sultrier, like jasmine and secrets. My stomach twisted as I unfolded the note. The handwriting was elegant, looping, not David's blocky scrawl. Meet me at our spot, darling. Midnight. L. The words landed like a punch. Darling? Our spot? L? My heart thudded so loud I swore it echoed off the mudroom walls. 20 years of marriage, 20 years of late-night talks, shared coffee mugs, and promises we'd etched into our wedding bands. And now this? I stood there, frozen, the note trembling in my hand. My mind raced, spinning through every L I could think of. Laura from his office? That flirty barista at the coffee shop he liked? Or someone I didn't even know? The perfume clung to the paper, mocking me with every breath. It wasn't mine. I'd never worn anything that bold, that seductive. I pictured David, his warm brown eyes and easy smile, the man who still kissed me goodnight after all these years. Could he really have a secret like this? I wanted to storm into the living room, shove the note in his face, and demand answers. But something stopped me. Maybe it was fear of what he'd say, or worse, what he wouldn't. I'd seen enough true crime shows to know you don't tip your hand too soon. I needed proof, something solid to hold on to before I let this tear our world apart. So I folded the note back up, careful not to smudge it, and slipped it back into his pocket. My hand shook as I grabbed the keys from the other side and forced a smile, calling out, "Found M, hon." David was sprawled on the couch, scrolling through his phone, the TV droning some football game he wasn't really watching. "Thanks, babe," he mumbled, barely looking up. His voice was the same as always, deep, familiar, a little tired from a long day at the accounting firm. But now every word felt like a lie. I studied him, searching for a telltale sign, a nervous glance, a too quick smile. Nothing. Just my husband, same as ever. Or so I thought. That night, I couldn't sleep. The note burned in my mind, every word replaying like a bad song stuck on loop. Darling. Midnight. L. I lay next to David, his steady breathing filling the dark, and wondered who he was dreaming of. I thought about the last few months, his late nights at the office, the way he'd started locking his phone, the new cologne he'd bought just because. Little things I'd brushed off as midlife quirks now felt like pieces of a puzzle I didn't want to solve. The next morning, I waited until he left for work. The second his car pulled out of the driveway, I was back in the mudroom, fishing the note out again. I held it under the kitchen light, studying every curve of the handwriting. It was on creamy stationery, the kind you don't buy at a gas station. The perfume was stronger now, or maybe that was my imagination. I sniffed it again, trying to place it, but it was foreign, like a stranger had walked into my life and left their scent behind. I spent the day obsessing. I googled floral perfumes with jasmine notes and scrolled through pages of designer brands, none of which I could afford. I checked David's credit card statements online, half expecting to see a charge from some fancy boutique. Nothing. Just gas, groceries, and a couple of dinners at that Italian place we liked. But then I noticed something, a cash withdrawal, $200, from an ATM near a part of town he had no reason to be in. My heart sank deeper. By noon, I was pacing the kitchen, the note tucked into my jeans pocket like a grenade. I called my best friend, Karen, but stopped short of telling her everything. You ever find something weird about Mike? I asked, keeping it vague. She laughed, said he leaves socks everywhere but nothing juicy. I wanted to spill it all, the note, the perfume, the sick feeling in my gut, but I didn't. Not yet. I needed to be sure. That evening, David came home later than usual. Client meeting ran long, he said, loosening his tie. I nodded, stirring spaghetti sauce on the stove, my back to him so he wouldn't see my eyes. You okay, Liz? He asked, and I hated how genuine he sounded. Just tired, I lied, forcing a smile. But as he grabbed a beer from the fridge, I noticed his coat wasn't on the hook. It was in the car, he said, when I asked. Spilled coffee on it, he muttered, avoiding my gaze. My pulse quickened. Was the note still there? Or had he moved it, knowing I might find it? I waited until he was in the shower, then slipped out to the garage. The coat was slung over the passenger seat, and my fingers trembled as I checked the pocket. The note was gone. My breath caught, a mix of relief and dread. Had he taken it to meet Elle tonight? Or was he covering his tracks? I went back inside, my mind a storm of what-ifs. I couldn't confront him yet, I needed more. A name. A place. Proof that wouldn't let him wiggle out with a smooth excuse. Over the next few days, I turned into someone I didn't recognize. I checked his emails when he left his laptop open, scrolled through his texts when he was in the yard. Nothing obvious, but the absence of evidence only made me more paranoid. I started noticing every little thing, the way he smiled at his phone, the extra care he took ironing his shirts. I even drove by his office one night, just to see if his car was there. It wasn't. My heart was a drumbeat, loud and relentless, but I kept it together. I had to play this smart. On Friday, I found my chance. David said he had to stay late for a big project. I nodded, kissed him goodbye, and waited 10 minutes before grabbing my keys. I followed him, keeping my distance, my old Honda blending into the evening traffic. He didn't go to the office. Instead, he pulled into a parking lot near a quiet little bar downtown, one we'd never been to together. I parked across the street, my hands sweaty on the wheel, and watched him walk inside. A woman was waiting at the door, tall, auburn hair, wearing a dress that screamed money. She smiled at him, and he touched her arm, just for a second, but it was enough. My throat tightened, but I didn't cry. Not yet. I snapped a picture with my phone, the timestamp glowing, 7:42 p.m. The note's words echoed in my head, our spot, darling. Was this it? Was she Elle? I drove home, the world blurring through tears I couldn't hold back anymore. But as I pulled into our driveway, something shifted. Anger replaced the hurt, sharp and hot. I wasn't going to let this break me. I'd loved David with everything I had, but if he was throwing that away, I'd make sure he regretted it. I tucked the note's memory deep in my heart, a spark to fuel what came next. I didn't know who Elle was or what they meant to him, but I was going to find out. And when I did, I'd be ready. The week after I found the note felt like living in a fog, every moment heavy with suspicion. David was still David on the surface, same morning coffee ritual, same absent-minded way he'd leave his socks on the living room floor. But now, every move he made seemed loaded, like he was playing a part in a play I hadn't been invited to. His late-night work calls that kept him glued to his phone in the den, the sudden weekend errands to pick up something quick that stretched into hours, they weren't just quirks anymore. They were clues, pieces of a puzzle I was desperate to solve, even if it broke me. I started watching him like a hawk. Every glance at his phone, every time he stepped out to take a call, I was there, cataloging it in my head. I'd lie awake at night, his steady snores beside me, wondering how I'd missed it. How had I not seen the cracks in our 20-year marriage? The note, meet me at our spot, darling. Midnight. Eldon was burned into my brain, that floral perfume still lingering in my memory like a ghost. I needed to know who Elle was, and I wasn't going to wait for answers to fall into my lap. On Tuesday, I made my move. David said he had a late meeting, some big client pitch at the accounting firm. "Don't wait up, Liz," he'd said, kissing my forehead before grabbing his keys. His smile was warm, but it didn't reach his eyes. I nodded, played the good wife, and watched him pull out of the driveway. My heart was pounding, but I didn't hesitate. I grabbed my jacket, slipped into my Honda, and followed him, keeping 2 cars between us like I'd seen in movies. My palms were sweaty on the steering wheel, my pulse a drumbeat in my ears. This wasn't me, Elizabeth Marie Thompson, the woman who baked cookies for PTA meetings and cried at sappy commercials. But here I was, tailing my husband through the streets of our quiet Ohio town like some amateur detective. He didn't go to the office. Instead, he drove across town to a little cafe I'd never heard of, tucked in a strip mall with flickering neon signs. The place was dimly lit, all moody shadows and warm amber light spilling onto the sidewalk. I parked in a lot across the street, slinking low in my seat, and watched him walk inside. My breath caught when I saw her, a woman with auburn hair cascading over her shoulders, wearing a sleek black dress that hugged her curves. She stood up from a corner table, her laugh carrying through the open door as she waved him over. They leaned close, her hand brushing his arm, lingering just a second too long. My stomach churned, bile rising in my throat. I fumbled with my phone, snapping a blurry photo through the cafe window, my hands shaking so bad I could barely hold it steady. I stayed there, hidden in the dark, watching them talk. Her smile was bright, her gestures animated, like she was telling a story she knew he'd love. David leaned in, nodding, his face softer than I'd seen it in months. It wasn't just a meeting. It was intimate, familiar, like they'd done this 100 times. I wanted to storm in, throw the note in his face, and scream until the whole cafe knew what he'd done. But I didn't. I sat there, my nails digging into my palms, and waited until they left. She hugged him goodbye, her arms lingering around his neck, and I snapped another photo, the timestamp glowing, 8:17 p.m. Back home, I waited until David was asleep, his phone charging on the nightstand. He'd started locking it a few months ago, said it was new company policy, but I'd seen him type the passcode enough times to guess it, 0714, our anniversary. My hands trembled as I unlocked it, the screen casting a cold light across the bedroom. I scrolled through his texts, my heart hammering so loud I was sure it'd wake him. There she was, saved as Lila with a little heart emoji. My chest tightened. The messages were short, cryptic, "Can't wait to see you. Same spot, 8? Missed you last night." No smoking gun, but enough to make my blood run cold. I screenshot everything, sent them to my email, and deleted the evidence from his sent folder. I wasn't ready for him to know I was onto him. The next few days were torture. I cooked dinner, smiled through his stories about work, and nodded when he complained about his boss. But every word felt like a lie, every touch a betrayal. I kept the screenshots hidden in a locked folder on my laptop, along with the photos from the cafe. I studied them late at night, zooming in on her face, trying to place her. Was she the Lila from his office, the one he'd mentioned in passing? The one who helped with the quarterly reports? Or was she someone else entirely? I googled her name, scoured LinkedIn, even checked his firm's website, but found nothing. Just a ghost with auburn hair and a laugh that haunted me. By Friday, I was a wreck. I couldn't eat, couldn't focus on the freelance editing jobs piling up on my desk. Karen called to check in, her voice chipper as she rambled about her new yoga class. "You sound off, Liz," she said. "Everything okay?" I wanted to tell her, about the note, the cafe, Lila, but the words stuck in my throat. What if I was wrong? What if I was blowing this out of proportion? But then I'd see those photos, her hand on his arm, and the doubt would vanish. I told Karen I was just tired, promised to meet for coffee soon, and hung up before I cracked. That night, David said he had another late meeting. "Big project wrap-up," he said, shrugging into his pea coat. I noticed he'd started wearing that damn cologne again, the one he'd bought just because. It mixed with the memory of that floral perfume, and I had to grip the kitchen counter to keep from screaming. "Don't wait up," he said, kissing my cheek. I smiled, my face tight, and watched him go. This time I didn't follow. I had a better idea. I drove to his office instead, parking in the lot and waiting. His car wasn't there, just like I'd expected. I called his work line, let it ring. No answer. I texted him, casual as anything, "How's the meeting going? Need anything?" 10 minutes later, he replied, "All good, just wrapping up. Home soon." Liar. I drove home, my mind spinning. If he wasn't at the office, where was he? Back at the cafe? Somewhere else with her? I needed more than photos and texts. I needed to catch him in the act, somewhere he couldn't talk his way out of. The next morning, I went through his code again, half hoping the note had reappeared. Nothing. But I found a receipt tucked in the lining, $87.50 at a wine bar downtown, dated last week. We hadn't been to a wine bar in years. I tucked the receipt into my pocket, another piece of the puzzle. I started checking his car when he wasn't home, looking for anything, a hair, a lipstick stain, another note. I found a single earring, small and gold, under the passenger seat. Not mine. I held it in my palm, my heart racing. It was hers, I was sure of it. By Sunday, I was done playing detective in the shadows. I needed to see it for myself, to know how deep this went. David said he had to run to the hardware store that afternoon, some excuse about fixing a leaky faucet. I let him go, waited 5 minutes, and followed again. This time, he drove to a park on the edge of town, a quiet place with walking trails and a small lake. I parked far enough away to stay unnoticed and watched him walk toward a bench by the water. There she was, Lila, in a red coat, her auburn hair catching the sunlight. They sat close, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her. My chest felt like it was caving in, but I pulled out my phone and started recording, capturing every damning second. I didn't confront him then. I couldn't. My hands were shaking too hard, my vision blurred with tears. But as I drove home, something hardened inside me. The pieces were falling into place, and they cut deeper than I'd ever imagined. Lila wasn't just a fling, she was a secret life, a betrayal woven into the fabric of our marriage. I didn't know what I'd do next, but one thing was clear, I wasn't going to let David and his darling Lila destroy me. I'd find their spot, and when I did, I'd make sure they both paid for every lie. Every day after that park bench moment felt like I was living a double life. By morning, I was Liz Thompson, the devoted wife of 20 years, stirring oatmeal for breakfast, asking David about his day, and laughing at his corny dad jokes like nothing had changed. But inside, my heart was breaking, splintering with every smile I faked. The images from that Sunday afternoon, Lila's head on his shoulder, his arm pulling her close, played on a loop in my mind, each replay sharper than the last. The note's words, "Meet me at our spot, darling. Midnight." Were a constant echo, and that floral perfume, jasmine and secrets, haunted me like a ghost I couldn't shake. I wasn't just hurt, I was furious, but I buried it deep. I needed proof, hard evidence that would leave no room for David's smooth-talking excuses. Suspicions weren't enough, I needed something undeniable. I started small, keeping up the act while I dug deeper. Over dinner, I'd ask casual questions, "How's work going, hon? Any big projects?" He'd ramble about spreadsheets and clients, his voice steady, his eyes meeting mine like he had nothing to hide. But I saw the tells now, the way his fingers tapped the table when I mentioned his late nights, the quick glance at his phone when it buzzed. I smiled through it all, nodding like the perfect wife, while my mind catalogued every slip. I wasn't just playing the devoted wife, I was becoming a master at it, and it made my skin crawl. My first real breakthrough came with his car. David had a fancy new SUV with a built-in GPS, the kind he bragged about for its navigation precision. I'd never thought much of it until I realized it could be my window into his lies. One morning, while he was in the shower, I synced his car's GPS to an app on my phone. It was easier than I expected, just a few clicks in the car settings menu, using the manual I found in the glove box. The app logged every trip, every destination, every mile. That evening, when he said he was grabbing drinks with the guys, I watched the app as his car headed straight to a wooded area by Lakeview, a good 30 minutes from any bar he'd ever mentioned. My hand shook as I stared at the blinking dot on my phone, parked at a spot called Willow Creek Cabins. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, David's snores filling the silence, and planned. Willow Creek was a cluster of rental cabins, the kind people booked for romantic getaways or quiet retreats. Their spot. The words from the note burned in my chest. I pictured them there, laughing, touching, sharing secrets in a place that was theirs, not ours. The thought made me sick, but it also lit a fire. I wasn't going to let this stay a secret. I needed to see it for myself, to catch them in a moment they couldn't deny. The next evening, David announced another late night. "Client dinner," he said, adjusting his tie in the hallway mirror. "Might be a long one." I nodded, stirring a pot of chili I had no intention of eating. "Have fun," I said, my voice light, my smile practiced. The second his taillights disappeared down the street, I grabbed my keys, a flashlight, and my phone. My heart was racing as I drove to Willow Creek, the GPS app guiding me to the exact cabin where his car had stopped the night before. The roads wound through dense pines, the moonlight barely breaking through. My hands trembled on the wheel, but I kept going, fueled by a mix of dread and determination. The cabin was small, cedar-sided, with a single light glowing through the front window. David's SUV was parked out front, next to a sleek silver sedan I didn't recognize. I pulled over 100 yards away, tucking my Honda behind a cluster of trees. My breath was shallow as I crept closer, staying low in the shadows. The air was cool, heavy with the scent of pine and lake water, but all I could think about was that damn perfume. I crouched near the window, my heart pounding so loud I was sure they'd hear it. Through the thin curtains, I saw them, David and Lila, tangled in an embrace on a worn leather couch. Her auburn hair spilled over his shoulder, her arms wrapped around him like she belonged there. He was whispering something, his lips close to her ear, and she laughed, soft and intimate. My vision blurred with tears, but I didn't look away. I pulled out my phone and started recording, the red dot blinking as it captured every second of their betrayal. The video was shaky, my hands unsteady, but it was clear enough. David's face, Lila's smile, their hands intertwined. I recorded for a full minute, maybe two, before I couldn't take it anymore. I backed away, my legs wobbly, and stumbled back to my car. I sat there in the dark, the phone clutched in my lap, tears streaming down my face. The note's perfume lingered in my mind, a cruel reminder of how far he'd gone. I wanted to scream, to barge in and confront them, but I knew better. A confrontation now would just give David a chance to spin a story, to gaslight me into doubting what I'd seen. I needed a plan, something that would hit him where it hurt, something that would make him feel the weight of what he'd done. I drove home, my mind a storm of anger and heartbreak. The cabin video was my trump card, but it wasn't enough. I needed to know who Lila was, how long this had been going on, and why. Back home, I transferred the video to my laptop, locking it in a password-protected folder alongside the cafe photos and screenshots of their texts. I poured a glass of wine, my hand still shaking, and sat at the kitchen table, staring at the earring I'd found in his car. It was small, gold, with a tiny pearl drop, elegant, like her. I googled Lila again, this time adding his company's name. A LinkedIn profile popped up, Lila Bennett, senior financial analyst, same firm as David. Her photo matched the woman from the cafe and the cabin, auburn hair, sharp cheekbones, a smile that screamed confidence. She was younger than me, maybe mid-30s, with a bio full of buzzwords like strategic growth and client relations. I hated her, but I hated myself more for not seeing it sooner. The next few days were a masterclass in deception. I woke up early, made David's coffee, and packed his lunch like nothing was wrong. "You're the best, Liz," he'd say, kissing my cheek before heading out. I'd smile, my stomach twisting, and wait for him to leave so I could dig deeper. I checked his email, his calendar, even his browser history, but he was careful, too careful. No incriminating searches, no love letters, just work emails and fantasy football stats. but I wasn't giving up. I called the office, pretending to be a client, and asked for Lila. "She's out today," the receptionist said, chipper and clueless. "Can I take a message?" I hung up, my mind racing. Was she with him? Were they at the cabin again? I started tracking his GPS every day, mapping out his lies. The cabin showed up twice more that week, always late at night. I didn't go back, I couldn't bear to see them again, but I checked the rental site for Willow Creek cabins. The booking history was private, but I found a customer service number and called, posing as a confused wife checking her husband's reservation. "Oh, Mr. Thompson," the clerk said after a pause. "He's got cabin 7 booked every Thursday for the next month." Every Thursday. My heart sank, but I thanked her and hung up, adding the detail to my growing file of evidence. By the end of the week, I was exhausted, running on coffee and rage. I'd stopped eating much, my appetite gone, but I kept up the act for David. We watched a movie Friday night, some dumb comedy he picked, and I laughed when he did, my hand resting on his like nothing had changed. But inside, I was plotting. The cabin video, the texts, the earring, the GPS logs, they were enough to confront him, but I wanted more. I wanted to know why. Was it love? Boredom? Was I not enough? The questions gnawed at me, but I pushed them down. I had to stay focused, had to be smarter than him. On Sunday, I got my next lead. David left his wallet on the counter while he mowed the lawn, and I flipped through it, my hands shaking. Tucked behind his driver's license was a business card, Lila Bennett, financial analyst. Her cell number was scrawled on the back in that same elegant script from the note. I memorized it, my pulse racing, and slipped the card back before he came inside. That night, I texted the number from a burner app on my phone, something vague, "Still on for Thursday?" My heart stopped when the reply came, "Always, darling. Can't wait." It was her. Lila. And she was calling him darling, just like the note. I didn't sleep that night. I lay next to David, his arms slung over me, and planned. The cabin was their spot, Thursday was their night, and I had proof, video, texts, a paper trail. But I didn't just want to catch him, I wanted to make him feel the weight of his betrayal. I thought about our life, our kids, our home, the vows we'd made in that little church all those years ago. I'd given him everything, and he'd thrown it away for her. I wasn't going to let him walk away clean. I'd play the devoted wife a little longer, but when the time came, I'd make sure David and Lila faced the truth. And I'd make sure it hurt. Our 20th anniversary was supposed to be a milestone, a night to toast to 2 decades of love, kids, and shared dreams in our cozy Ohio home. Instead, I was staging a war. I spent the day preparing, my hands steady despite the storm raging inside me. I chose my red dress, the one David always said made me look like a movie star, and set the dining room table with our best china. The perfume-scented note, "Meet me at our spot, darling." Midnight. Elda. Sat in my purse, a grenade waiting for its moment. I poured 2 glasses of Cabernet, the bottle we'd saved from our last vacation, and cooked his favorite, steak, medium rare, with garlic mashed potatoes. The scene was perfect, a snapshot of the devoted wife. But tonight, I wasn't just Liz Thompson. I was a woman ready to burn it all down. David came home at 6, whistling as he loosened his tie. "Wow, Liz, you went all out," he said, his smile warm but oblivious. I nodded, my lips curving just enough to hide the ice in my veins. We ate, talked about nothing, weather, the neighbor's new dog, while my heart pounded like a drum. As dessert arrived, a store-bought cheesecake I hadn't touched, I reached into my purse and placed the note on the table, its floral scent cutting through the air. "Who's Lila?" I asked, my voice steady, though my insides churned like a hurricane. David's fork froze midair. His face paled, eyes darting to the note, then to me. "What, where'd you get that?" he stammered, his voice cracking. I leaned back, sipping my wine, and watched him squirm. "Don't lie, David. I found it in your coat." "Who's Lila?" He opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. It's nothing, Liz. Just a work thing. A joke. A joke. The word hit like a slap. I pulled out my phone, opened the video from the cabin, and pressed play. The screen showed him and Lila, tangled in an embrace, her auburn hair spilling over his shoulder. His world crumbled right there, his eyes wide, his breath hitching. Liz, I can explain, he started, but I cut him off with a bitter laugh. Explain? You're kissing her in a cabin you rented every Thursday. His jaw dropped, and I saw the panic set in. He didn't know about the GPS, the screenshots, the earring. She's just a colleague, he said, his voice desperate. It's not serious, I swear. Not serious. 20 years of marriage, and he thought that excused it. I leaned forward, my eyes locked on his. I've already talked to a lawyer, David. Our joint accounts are frozen. Your not serious fling just cost you everything. He stared at me, his face a mix of shock and guilt. Liz, please, we can work this out. I love you. The words sounded hollow, like a script he'd rehearsed. I stood, tossing my napkin on the table. You loved me enough to lie for months. To sneak off with her. To call her darling. I spit the word, letting it sting. He reached for my hand, but I pulled back. I'm staying at Karen's tonight, I said, grabbing my purse. Don't call me. As I walked out, the note still sat on the table, its perfume lingering like a taunt. I'd planned every word, every move, but the victory felt hollow. My heart was shattered, not by the betrayal alone, but by the man I'd loved turning into a stranger. I drove to Karen's, tears blurring the streetlights, knowing this was just the beginning. David's excuses wouldn't save him now, and Lila's charm wouldn't protect her. I had my proof, my plan, and a fire inside me that wouldn't fade. He'd pay for breaking our vows, and I'd make sure it hurt. The morning after our anniversary dinner, I packed a suitcase. Not much, just my clothes, my favorite books, and the photo albums of the kids when they were little. I left behind the wedding china, the monogrammed towels, all the trappings of the life I'd built with David. Each item I touched felt like a memory tainted by his lies, by that perfume-scented note, meet me at our spot, darling. Midnight. Elda. And the image of him with Lila in that cabin. My hand shook as I zipped the bag, but my resolve was iron. I wasn't running, I was choosing myself. David was still asleep when I slipped out, his snores echoing through the house we'd called ours for 20 years. I didn't leave a note. He didn't deserve one. I drove to Karen's, my best friend since high school, who opened her door with a hug and no questions. Stay as long as you need, Liz, she said, her voice soft but firm. I nodded, too raw to speak, and settled into her guest room, a small space with a quilted bedspread and a window overlooking her backyard. That first night, I didn't sleep. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, replaying David's pale face at the dinner table, his stammered excuses. It's not serious, I swear. The words were a knife, twisting deeper with every memory of his late nights, his locked phone, that damn cologne he'd started wearing. But beneath the hurt, a spark flickered. I wasn't just a betrayed wife. I was Elizabeth Marie Thompson, and I was done letting his lies define me. David's call started by noon. First, a hesitant voicemail, Liz, please, let's talk. I messed up, but I love you. Then texts, one after another, pleading, apologizing, promising to end it with Lila. I didn't respond. Every buzz of my phone felt like a tug on a wound, but I let it bleed. I'd given him 20 years, 2 kids, countless dinners, endless nights waiting up while he worked late. His begging now was too little, too late. The note, Lila's perfume, the cabin video, they were scars I couldn't unsee, etched into my heart like graffiti. I blocked his number, not out of anger, but to protect the fragile strength I was building. The first week at Karen's was a blur. I cried in the shower, where the water drowned out my sobs. I stared at the screenshots of his texts to Lila, can't wait to see you, darling, until my eyes burned. But I also started moving. I called my lawyer, a sharp woman named Diane who'd been recommended by a friend. She reviewed my evidence, the note, the video, the GPS logs, the earring, and nodded. "You've got a strong case, Liz. We'll protect your assets and push for what you deserve." We froze the rest of our joint accounts, leaving David with just his personal checking, and started drafting separation papers. It felt clinical, like dissecting a life, but it also felt right. Karen dragged me out of the house that weekend. "You need air, not walls," she said, pulling me to a local coffee shop where we used to gossip in our 20s. The familiarity was a balm, same creaky wooden floors, same smell of roasted beans. I reconnected with old friends, women I'd lost touch with during the years of being David's wife. We laughed over lattes, their stories of kids and careers reminding me I was more than my pain. One friend, Maria, mentioned a painting class she'd started. "You used to love art, Liz. Come with me." I hesitated, my paints had been gathering dust in the attic for years, but something in her smile made me say yes. The painting class was in a community center, all bright lights and mismatched easels. The instructor, a wiry guy with a gray ponytail, talked about finding your truth through color. I rolled my eyes at first, but as I dipped my brush into crimson, something shifted. I painted a storm, swirling blues and grays, with a single streak of red cutting through. It was messy, raw, but it was mine. For the first time in weeks, I felt alive, like I was clawing my way back to myself. I went back the next week, then the next, each canvas a little bolder, a little freer. David didn't stop trying. He showed up at Karen's one evening, his eyes red, his voice hoarse. "Liz, I ended it with Lila. I swear, it's over." I stood in the doorway, arms crossed, my heart a mix of pity and rage. "You ended it because I caught you," I said, my voice cold. "You don't get to play the hero now." He reached for me, but I stepped back. "Go home, David. Or wherever you're staying." Karen appeared behind me, her presence a quiet strength, and he left, his shoulders slumped. I didn't cry that time. I felt lighter, like I'd shed a weight I'd carried too long. A month later, Maria invited me to a gallery event downtown, a local artist showcase. I almost said no, crowds felt daunting, but I went, wearing a green dress that made me feel like someone new. The gallery was buzzing, all wine glasses and soft jazz. I wandered through, admiring bold abstracts and delicate watercolors, when a man approached me. He was tall, with kind eyes and a salt and pepper beard, holding a glass of sparkling water. "You look like you're seeing the world in these paintings," he said, his voice warm, no trace of pretense. I laughed, surprised by how easy it felt. His name was Tom, a history teacher who loved art but admitted he couldn't draw a stick figure. We talked for hours, about books, travel, the way a painting could say what words couldn't. His smile didn't hide secrets, and when he asked for my number, I gave it without hesitation. That night, driving back to Karen's, I felt a shift. David's calls had stopped, his texts reduced to a single "I'm sorry I didn't answer." The truth had shattered our vows, ripped apart the life I'd known, but it had also cracked open something new. I wasn't just surviving, I was rebuilding. My paintings lined Karen's guest room, bursts of color that felt like defiance. I texted Tom the next day, agreeing to coffee. I signed up for another art class. I called my kids, Jake and Sarah, and told them everything, not to hurt them, but to be honest. They were shocked, angry, but they listened, and I felt their love across the miles. I wasn't healed, not yet. Lila's perfume still lingered in my nightmares, and David's betrayal was a scar that would fade but never vanish. But as I stood in front of a new canvas, brushing gold across a stormy blue, I felt a fire I thought I'd lost. I was Liz Thompson, not just a wife, not just a mother, but a woman with a life to claim. I walked away from David's lies, from the weight of his secrets, and into a world that was mine alone. And for the first time in years, I couldn't wait to see what came next.